North Korea tests a hydrogen bomb, or so they say. This is SkyWatch TV for Thursday, January 7th, 2016. I'm Derek Gilbert. On Wednesday, South Korean officials detected an artificial earthquake near the main nuclear test site in North Korea. That test was later confirmed by the North Korean government, which said it was their first successful test of a hydrogen bomb. But weapons experts who analyzed the initial data said, not so much. The blast wasn't nearly powerful enough for a hydrogen bomb. They can be hundreds or thousands of times more explosive than a standard atomic weapon. But still, this is another step closer to Kim Jong-un's goal of developing a nuclear warhead that can be mounted on an intercontinental missile. President Obama has followed through on his promise to tighten gun rules without bothering to go through Congress. He wiped away tears as he spoke to the nation, referring to the mass shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School 3 years ago. Surrounded by family members of victims of mass shootings, the president made an emotional address saying that the constitutional right to bear arms needs to be balanced by the right to worship, gather peacefully, and live our lives. Now, much of this executive order is to, quote, Shakespeare, sound and fury signifying nothing. Doesn't really change much of anything. But there are a couple of aspects of this executive order that are troubling. The president said that $500 million would be spent to engage people with serious mental illness in care. Now, spending money on mental health initiatives is a good thing, but in the context of curbing gun crime, this appears to open a loophole to allow mental health professionals to label more people as mentally ill just to keep them from owning guns. In fact, under the diagnostic manual used by mental health professionals, DSM-5, one can be diagnosed with something called oppositional defiant disorder. Oppositional defiant disorder. This is a recurrent pattern of negativistic, defiant, disobedient, and hostile behavior toward authority figures. In other words, a doctor's opinion might be that people who accuse the government of unconstitutional behavior might be ineligible to do this. That was qualifying for a concealed carry permit, by the way. Now, here's another interesting question. Will climate change deniers be considered too mentally ill to own a firearm? The idea that climate change skeptics are unstable isn't new. President Obama's EPA chief publicly said that climate skeptics aren't normal people. A professor from the University of Oregon about 4 years ago presented a paper at a conference in which she compared the struggle against climate skepticism to the struggle against racism and slavery in the American South. Anyway, you might think twice about sharing your opinion of climate change the next time you're at your doctor's office. Now, there was one interesting take on the president's executive orders published earlier this week at the website bearingarms.com. What the president didn't mention during his emotional speech was that the ATF had just made it easier to acquire guns regulated by the National Firearms Act. The ATF had just eliminated the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, or CLEO, sign-off requirement, which makes it easier now to purchase silencers, machine guns, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and items classified under the law as any other weapon. The author of the piece at bearingarms.com points out that there are only 2 cases of criminal homicide with NFA-registered weapons in the United States in the last 82 years. In other words, the executive order, when you come right down to it, isn't about curbing gun crime. It's just about making it more difficult for law-abiding gun owners. Elsewhere, evidence is growing that the Islamic State has used sarin gas in Syria. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which is an international group based in The Hague, said that blood samples taken from victims in Syria confirm the use of the deadly gas. Sarin is a nerve gas. It's estimated to be about 26 times more deadly than cyanide. Now, this news comes as the OPCW announced that it had just finished destroying the last of the Syrian government's stockpile of chemical weapons. The group didn't say when the sarin gas had been used or speculate on who might have used it, but Russia, the government of Russia, has said that it's a very high possibility that it was in fact ISIS. And in December, a Turkish lawmaker, a member of the opposition party, said that the materials to produce sarin were brought in through Turkey and mixed in ISIS camps inside Syria. Now, you might remember back in August of 2013, the U.S. and Europe accused Bashar al-Assad's government of using chemical weapons against rebels on the outskirts of Damascus. This crossed that infamous red line that President Obama had drawn. Of course, crossing that red line resulted in no action by the United States. However, last October, two deputies from the main opposition party in Turkey corroborated a story that had been published earlier in the year by investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, that the attack that crossed the red line was actually coordinated by Turkey's intelligence service in coordination with the Syrian rebels. They were trying to provoke the United States into responding by making it appear as though the Syrian government had crossed the red line, forcing the U.S. to put boots on the ground and take out the government of Bashar al-Assad, a longtime enemy of Turkey. Now, at the time, it seemed unlikely to me that the Syrian government had anything to gain by using chemical weapons. There's no question that Bashar al-Assad is a dictator who has not hesitated to use force against his own people. But if you just ask the old question, cui bono, who profits when something like this happens? It appeared that there was nothing that Assad would gain by using chemical weapons and everything to gain for the rebels by provoking the United States to invade, just in case President Obama actually meant what he said about crossing that red line. In Europe, the flood of refugees from the Middle East has taken an ugly turn. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets of Cologne, Germany on Tuesday. They're angry at the government's failure to prevent dozens of sexual assaults on New Year's Eve by the city's migrant community. The mass attack took place during the city's New Year's Eve party at the main train station in Cologne. Apparently, the noise was so loud it distracted the crowd from what was going on, and police as well. 90 women have reported being sexually assaulted, and up to 1,000 men described as Arab or North African may be suspects in what authorities there are calling a crime of a whole new dimension. So far, fewer than a dozen arrests in this case. Multiple assaults on New Year's Eve by migrants on women, also reported in the German cities of Hamburg and Stuttgart. That's a situation that is growing more volatile every day. January 1st, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals went into effect. These goals, when you read them, sound admirable: ending poverty, hunger, disease, guaranteeing access to clean water, sanitation, sustainable energy, equal opportunities to people, regardless of race or gender. But as with anything, the devil is in the details. And when you get into the regulations that would be imposed to achieve these goals, it becomes apparent that the real goal is to take control of all means of consumption and production and turn the global system into a one-world technocracy. And to that end, we're watching the development of something called the Internet of Things. Now, it sounds really cool to us techies here in the West, but we need to remember that for technocrats to control the means of consumption and production, they need data, numbers to crunch, lots and lots of data, which means they need things feeding data into these algorithms. And there is a drive among technology companies to figure out ways to connect everything to the internet, from cars to cash registers, sneakers to home appliances, and especially those energy-consuming things like light bulbs and your thermostat. But what's holding things back are the current Wi-Fi standards in place. Although Wi-Fi is pretty fast, on our router at home, before we moved out of the range of cable internet, we could have 3 people watching movies on 3 different Roku boxes at the same time without a problem. But there are too many dead spots with the current Wi-Fi standards. Your wearables can drop out of range when you, because of things like walls and floors between you and the router. If you go more than a couple hundred feet from your home, you lose contact with the internet. And the Internet of Things is supposed to be connected all the time. Well, never fear, a new industry standard is being proposed and tested right now that may overcome these problems, uses a lower frequency, the 900 megahertz bandwidth, which apparently is better suited for low-powered internet connections, devices like Wi-Fi connected coffee makers and refrigerators. than the current 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz band that we use to connect our internet-connected laptops. The interesting thing about this new standard, which again is still being tested, it's called Halo. Halo. One of the most dangerous beliefs, unbiblical beliefs, held by Christians today is something called replacement theology. This is the belief that God is done with the Jewish people and that the church has replaced Israel in all of God's end times prophecies. Now, why is this dangerous? What are the consequences, the implications of replacement theology? We talk about that with New York Times bestselling author Joel Richardson. He's our next guest on SkyWatch TV, coming up this Tuesday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Christian Television Network. Of course, 9:30 p.m. Eastern is UTC -5, and the Christian Television Network is broadcast on DirecTV Channel 376, Dish Network Channel 267, the Glory Star Satellite Channel 117, and the program also streams to the internet at the Christian Television Network's website, ctnonline.com. Joel Richardson coming up Tuesday night talking about his latest book, When a Jew Rules the World. And of course, if you missed that program on Tuesday night, you'll see it later on our official Roku channel. If you got one of those handy set-top boxes for Christmas and haven't added us to your account yet, log on to the web, roku.com, get into the channel store there and search for SkyWatch TV and add us to your account. We sure would appreciate that. During the month of January, we also appreciate your support. And our gift to you in January, while supplies last, is a journal you can use to record your thoughts, your prayer life, and the things that God is doing in your life. It's the Miracles personal journal, along with a beautiful wooden bookmark. Our gift to you for your gift of any amount during the month of January, again, while supplies last. Details on how to donate posted at skywatchtv.com. And you can also support us without spending a dime by clicking the mouse. You'll find SkyWatch TV online here, Twitter, Facebook, our official YouTube channel, and all of those different social media networks have ways you can share or like SkyWatch TV and the various things that we post. That shares them around to the people who know you and helps us get the word out there. We thank you for helping us spread the word here as we enter 2016. And of course, if you're curious about what's rattling through my mostly empty head, you'll find my web presence here, Twitter, Facebook, and my website. And if you've got questions or comments for SkyWatch TV, please send those to me, dgilbert@skywatchtv.com. Thank you for watching as we keep watch. Tomorrow, Sci Friday. Until then, I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV.